How's that? Is that going? Stream offline. Receiving your content. Your audience will see it in a minute. You are live. The internet can see you now. To stop using your encoder. 5 seconds. 7. Can everybody see this okay? Let me see if I can find that on my channel. Where's my channel? Oh, yeah, there we go. Okay. Are people seeing this? Let me know if you're here. How do I look? How's the jacket? Yeah? How's the jacket? John Perroni said that if I wear the jacket, he'll tune in, so that's all I need to be able to tune in, right? If anyone's got any questions about what you want to hear or some things about music, I mean, that's kind of my purpose for doing this tonight. I have a nice glass of red wine. We had teriyaki for dinner. Teraki's New Zealand fish. It's delicious. Went to More Wilson's, super fresh. Chips and broccoli. That was our dinner. Cooked by yours truly. So let me know if you guys are seeing this. I assume you are. Yeah, I'll keep the volume down on that. Hello from Hong Kong. Hey, I love Hong Kong. My mother-in-law used to live there. We used to spend a bit of time there. We were there when the protests were going on a couple of years ago. It was pretty cool. I mean, not cool for the people there, but cool for us as visitors to get to experience something completely different. Hey, Jason, how are you, man? Oh, great. Glad you can see everything and hear everything. So anything you guys want to know about music or guitar or red wine? I was just thinking about this tune, Misty. I really like that tune. I'm going to play that. So the wine is one that my wife got. She got these 3 bottles of, I think it's Nuremberg or something like that. It's not bad. Hey, John. Anything you guys want to hear? Or anything you want to know about guitar or music? Kind of been doing this a while, so hopefully I have something to offer. So you said, Victor, you said, like to see you dive in and out of the tonal center using altered scale you showed in a previous video. Yeah, so I've often said that, you know, in order, I'll start again. I'm fumbling my words. I'll say this. I'm trying to think about how to say this clearly so it makes sense. I think the key to playing out is people need to learn how to play in first, right? And that's one thing that a lot of people miss, right? They don't really go deep in playing inside the key and like what notes really resonate against the chords and how to play changes inside the key. And then from there, you can play out, right? But if you haven't done that step, then nothing else is going to make sense. And then after that, I mean, the altered scale is really just a 5-to-1 resolution that we're looking at, right? So 9 times out of 10, if it's a dominant chord going to a minor, it'll be altered. And if it's a dominant chord going to a major, and it'll be the flat 9/2 all diminished. Both are different sounds, but both are interchangeable because rules are there to be broken anyway. But anyway, altered scale. So I'm thinking of that in B flat. So it's just basically B melodic minor. Right, will take us to E minor. So I want to know how to play that B melodic minor across the whole neck, of course. I call it the jazz minor. I don't want to know where that is across the whole neck, but I'm thinking of it from a B flat perspective. And the key thing here is being able to go from that sound, which is clearly, very clearly B flat altered, into E flat minor, and it's how that transition point that's the key. And the key to making it work, always with anything that's out, is the resolution. If you resolve on the beat in a way that makes sense, like on a strong chord tone, then everything you play before that, regardless of what it is, will make sense. If the resolution is not correct, then nothing makes sense. It's all just a bunch of wrong notes. And so anyway, altered scale. So it's basically the melodic minor, or the jazz minor if you want to call it that, which is what I prefer to call it. You play upper semitone, and we're looking at how we're going to go into a minor chord 9 times out of 10. Now if it goes into a major chord, then we need to look at how that transition works. So a good way to practice this is if you've got a loop pedal, set up a loop pedal and just go... get that looping around and around, and then practice going. So you see there, I was kind of going between the B flat altered to the E flat minor. Anyway, I hope that helps. Play that same vibe. Thanks, John. I will. In a sec. The thing too is remember that with any scale, a scale is kind of not really, doesn't really mean much. Like scales and chords and all that stuff all go together. So I kind of look at it as, if I'm going from B flat altered into E flat minor, I'll use those for soloing, but I also use it for comping. I'll draw chords out of those scales, sounds. But of course, to be honest, when I play, like actually play gigs, I don't really think about any of this stuff. It's like it's all done in the practice room, and then when I play, I'm kind of hopefully have done enough. When I say I'm not really thinking about it, I'm meaning like I'm not actively thinking about this note is a B flat over a B flat chord. I'm really trying to follow my ear and what the music's doing, and more involved in what the questions of what's going on with the music. Such a cool chord. I like that chord. It really works well up high. Not so well down low. But up high, it's a pretty cool chord. It's crunchy. That's why it doesn't work so well down low. But anyway, it's a minor major 7, but with the minor 7 and the major 7. So we have the flat third in E flat. You have the flat 7. You have the major, and then which is D, and then the fifth. There's your root note. Do you think little chord clusters out of the jazz melodic minor? All the time. Totally. I really like double stops, and not double stops in terms of like that Chuck Berry type thing, which is awesome in itself, but in terms of a more jazz or jazz fusion type setting, then double stops or just playing 2 notes or 3 notes is really awesome. So yeah, I definitely think that kind of stuff all the time. And again, another good way to develop that is just to take a couple of notes, like say these 2 notes, and then go, right, I'm going to take that through the E flat Dorian scale. And so on, right? And then take those same 2 notes, if they fit, now I'm going to take them through B flat altered. Is that right? No. Yeah. Anyway, so taking those and just trying to be able to go through the chords, and then and making those 2 notes follow the shape of what's going to happen with the chords. So, for example, if I'm practicing that, I'll practice that by itself first, and then I'll put a track on and see if I can move up those chords and down them, and wherever the next chord might land, that's when I transition into the next scale, and then the chord might change back, but I'll try and keep going in the same motion. So I'm keeping my melodic line going in the same direction, but I'm adjusting the notes to fit the scale. And that's something I've worked on a lot in my playing, because I've noticed something that piano players do is that piano players tend to play like a line and then they'll kind of go through the changes, whereas a lot of guitar players, we tend to jump around all over the place. You guys know what I mean? Right? Like I'll see people all the time. I'll say this. I had a Skype lesson with a guy the other day from Auckland, a really great young player, but he's kind of self-taught. Hasn't had a lesson, barely had a lesson before, and he's a rock guy, and he was playing pentatonic like this, right? And then when I went to the next change, it was so same shape, just move up, right? Instead of. See, I'd play it in the same place. Like, why move? Because that's the sweet spot of the guitar, right? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, it's an Ibanez. This is a John Schofield model, JSM 100. And they have a JSM 10 now, which is like the, I think it's the same but without the flame top. I don't know if you guys can see that. Should I make it a little brighter? Would that help? So this has the flame. I think the JSM 10 doesn't, or maybe it does. Or there's some difference anyway. I've had this since 2008, so it's been with me for a while, and it's done a lot of gigs. It's probably my favorite guitar. I go between this and the Talman, which is over there. In fact, I can show you guys that. If I can reach it. There we go. I go between these two a lot. This guitar here gets used a lot as well. I mean, it's more kind of Stratocaster, Telecaster like. So they both get used, but I think if anything, I lean more towards this guitar because it's a little nicer to play. A Strat, you always have to work a little harder, but there's something too about that kind of mid-range thing that a Gibson does, Gibson scale length like this, like a 335, which is basically what this is, as opposed to a Strat type guitar. They tend to have a different mid-range, so they cut differently, and I think, to me, that suits certain things better. Hello, Mia Granville, that's my daughter. I guess you're not watching your movie inside in our living room. So yeah, this is it's been dropped, as you can see. Actually, I'm going to take this jacket off. Sorry, John. I know you requested the jacket, but it's getting too hot. And this is that Pedal Show t-shirt, as you guys know. I'm a big fan of those guys and that show. I think those guys are awesome. Dan and Mick. Dan's a good Aussie boy. But yeah, I love that stuff. I love pedals. I mean, I've just started building. I don't know if you guys can see it back there, but I've just started building a new pedal board. And this pedal board is going to be epic. I've had a pedal train for a while. You know those pedal trains, and I kind of just got sick of it. It's like it was a compromise. I couldn't quite fit enough pedals on, or things I had to move things around, or this pedal had to twist this way because it wouldn't fit. And then I was just like, bugger it. Like, why am I compromising on what I want? So I thought, well, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to build what I want, right? So I'm just going to bolt them down on a piece of plywood. I'm just going to carry them to gigs. I don't care if it's got a case. Because frankly, I'm only going to use a big pedal board if I'm playing local gigs anyway, or if someone else is carting my stuff, in which case it'll go in a road case and they can deal with it, like with the NZSO or the orchestras or whatever. And if there's anything that's a fly day, I'll just take the Fractal, which is what I'm playing through now, because it's so much easier to just have an amp and the effects all in one, and then I'll just plug that into the system, right? And it's traveling anyway, and a pair of headphones or in-ear monitors or whatever. Yeah, so I want to started building this epic pedal board back there, if you can see it. And I don't really quite know what's going to be the ultimate order to have all those pedals in. So what I did was I just set them up on the floor like old school styles, right? And I and it's meant I've had to do some kind of crazy long cable runs. But for example, the loop pedal, I want the loop pedal on my right foot. I really struggle to trigger it with the left foot properly. It's just, I don't know, it's the left, I'm right-handed, so maybe it's something to do with that. But it's meant that usually you want the loop pedal at the end of the chain so you can have any of the effects going through the loop, right? Or whatever. So, yeah, so that means I had to kind of run a cable back and then back to the other end and all that kind of stuff. But the other thing I did was I bought this pedal that allows me to take all of my pedals out of the chain. So I just hit one switch and they're all out. It just goes straight through, except for the reverb pedal, which is true bypass anyway. So the idea of that is that the reverb pedal I'm going to leave on the whole time anyway. Right, so the cool thing with that is I can leave that on, and then if I want to set up, say, 3 pedals, I set up those 3 pedals and it hits one switch, which opens up a loop of the whole board. The other thing I've noticed too is that if you're running I think there's 12 pedals on there or something, you actually lose a little bit of signal, but now I can just bypass it. Like if I'm in the studio, I just bypass the whole pedal board. And that will keep, if I want a really pure, clean sound. So, yeah. How often do you get frets changed? I'm actually really hopeless with it. I try and keep them going as long as they could. I've never had them changed on this, but these frets are really, really big. I think Rob Matthews, my tech, did some work on them last time, and that was just like a little bit of polishing or whatever. But these frets are real big. On this guitar, it has stainless steel frets, so they're probably never ever going to need to be replaced. They'll last longer than anything. Stainless steel frets, just rock hard. So these all need to be leveled, and they definitely need that now. They feel like they're not quite, they're a little high for me. I'd like them a little lower. I don't really like too big frets. I like the kind of more vintage style. I always liked really, really big frets for a long time, but now I'm more and more into the more old school style frets. But I mean, 10 years you should get at least out of a set of frets, maybe longer. Depends how much you play, really. Luke. Greetings from, so Luke says, Dear Nick, you seem very open to many genres of music. I am. I'm into everything. Well, anything that's good. Did classical tradition influence you as well? Yes, most definitely. Greetings from Poland. Greetings from Wellington, New Zealand. Hope you're safe over there. I've never been to Poland, but one day I will. I'm sure. I've got some friends there. The classical thing is huge. I played classical guitar before I played anything else for a little while, and I've always kind of been drawn by those influences. And you'll probably hear me play a lot of tenths like this. that's drawing directly from classical influences. Sometimes I really like those kind of pedal tone things that classical players do. Some of the classic composers will also end a minor tune on a major chord to leave you with a, sort of resolve it through to a major chord to give it a, not leave you with a sad feeling from the song, and I quite like doing that as well. Sort of work your way more towards major and then finish on a major chord. You don't want it to come out of the blue, because that's kind of bad too. So yeah, most definitely. I love lots of classical music. Bela Bartok is one of my favorites. I tend to gravitate more towards the darker side of classical music, not the. I don't really like the stuff that's too kind of flowery or too kind of light, if you will. You know what I mean? So Bartok I really like, and loads of the classics, loads of classical guitar, heaps of people. John Williams was someone who I went through a big phase of when I was a teenager, of just really digging his playing. But heaps of guys, Isaac Albanese. And I've always believed that connection between jazz and classical is huge, and I've always tried to foster that. When I was teaching at a university, Jane Curry and I would often try and contribute to things together, and I would get her to come and work with my students, and vice versa. I'd go and work with the classical students and teach them a little bit about jazz and the music I play. So, yeah, but I think people in this day and age, you should play all music. There's too much. There's so much great music out there. Why not embrace all of it? Why do musicians have to be genres anymore? That's kind of odd, in my opinion. So nowadays, different once upon a time. Because really genres were about, record stores, about being able to line records up in record stores. So the jazz, people wanted a jazz album, then what jazz going to be here? So nowadays, what is a record store? They don't even really exist, except for probably in some, hick town in New Zealand somewhere. There'll be a record store or something. But otherwise, everyone else is, it's all digital, right? So music is music. So I'm into everything. I listen to lots of stuff. Today I was listening to Peter Gabriel just before, track Sledgehammer. Just the production on that track is just incredible, and the groove and the way they play, everything about it, really. What else have I been listening to? I was listening to some Sting earlier. We were listening to Miles Davis earlier on before that as well. Some George Benson, so him playing all blues and various different things. So yeah. Too early for a scotch? No, I'd love to have a scotch, actually. I should go and get one, except I'd have to go and leave this room and get one. But I do have a little drop of wine left, so that's what I'm having instead. I don't have perfect pitch either. Wish I did. What do you say? Jason, yep, that loop pedal is a long cable run to get back to the right side. Always a hassle. Yeah, so I've had to run like a cable all the way back here and then all the way back to the end. I've had to do that a couple times on the board. But I was like, I'm just not willing to compromise on it anymore. It needs to be laid out exactly how I want it. And that's why I've kind of set the pedals up on the ground back here. Because then I'm just going to use them first, and then it's really easy to change things. Once they're on a board, it's kind of set. So then I can unplug things and move them around and go, well, what happens if, say, this distortion pedal goes before this distortion pedal? And for example, the T drive, I really love the Vertex T drive into the BB preamp. That is like a singing, sustaining Brian May type guitar sound that I just dig. And so, I experimented with that. Like, which way around does it sound better? Which should go first? I've heard a lot of people say your higher gain pedals go first and your lower gain pedals go last if you're going to stack them. So I did that. I put the T drive first, the highest gain one I have, and then I have the BB preamp, and then I have a tube screamer, which has always been part of my board, some kind of tube screamer. And I found that was kind of the right combination, but I tried them all at least anyway. And then I went, where should delay go? Where should tremolo go? And not only where should they go, like I've got two rows, so I've got a row here and then another row at the back. And I'm going to boost the row up at the back. Like, where do I want the pedals at the front? So the pedals at the front are all the ones that have tap tempo on them. So, for example, the Keeley Echoes pedal has tap tempo, and I want that at the front. I also need to leave enough gaps so that I can reach that tap tempo without, like, even thinking about it. Where does my volume pedal want to go? And all those sorts of questions. So, yeah. Tenths are thirds. Yeah, exactly. They are. They're a third plus an octave, right? Although I tend to think of them as tenths because it makes more sense to me than thinking about them as thirds, because they're not really a third. A third to me is within the same octave, at least in terms of how I think about it. But you're correct, they're just thirds. It's another way of looking at it. I always wonder why someone would drop. Can you elaborate? I heard you mention it's dropped. I presume the whole thing is dropped a half tone when you said dropped. I'm not sure what you mean, Victor. Sorry. Can you explain a little more? Poland is amazing. Yeah. We had a trumpet player out here a few years ago from Poland, and he was an awesome guy, great player too. And New Zealand immigration denied his application. Apparently, he wasn't a special enough player to come here. I know. There was a few people who were very pissed off about that, but he was killer, and we played heaps of gigs, and he was a lovely chap. And so he's moved back to Poland, and last I heard, he was playing in a big band. The John Clayton big band, the legendary John Clayton. So there you go. Go figure. Can you demonstrate ways of developing intros to standards that don't sound cliche? Yeah, okay, cool. Cliche is actually a good thing, in my opinion, for intros. And the reason I say that is that you got to kind of know all those textbook setups. And I say that because if you know those, then you can know how to develop them to make them not sound cliche or sound new and interesting or come up with your own. But if you don't know all those cliches, then you kind of haven't got anything to build off. For example, if I'm in the key of G, a classic one is... Right, and that gets me to the G. So I'm just going from a G over a B, B flat diminished, A minor, D7, and I'll do that twice and then hit the top of the tune. And those cliches are like in a million tunes, and they're there for a reason because they work, right? The thing I would say with intros is think about what the purpose of an intro is. The only purpose of an intro is to set up the tune. It's not to set up the drum solo or the bass solo or anything else. It has one purpose, to set up the tune, the melody. Not the chords, nothing else. So I think about it, well, what am I trying to do by doing that? Do I want to play the melody? Well, no, because if I play the melody, then when the melody comes around, I've kind of ruined it. Do I want to suggest the melody? Probably a good idea. Do I want to play something that's in the key about where we're going? Probably a good idea. And there's lots of factors like that. So I like to always look at kind of all those factors, and then that helps me to come up with an intro that makes sense in relation to the tune. Some tunes just want to start on the top of the tune, and that's cool too. Other tunes want to set up, especially if you're playing with singers. It's really nice to be able to give a singer a good, strong intro, because they can't just pluck the note out of thin air. And you can give them the note before they start, but if you play an intro, then you don't need to. They've already heard everything that's going on, and if you've played a really good intro that fits, they know what's going to happen. Hey, man. Hey, Jonas. Sorry, I'm trying to read this. What's this say? Genre's all about old school marketing, and I reckon that's outdated now. Totally agree, Jason. Totally. I'm having an espresso and a cognac. Oh, I love cognac. No, it's not too early. Not in New Zealand, at least anyway. It's, 8:30 here? So that's all good for me. You got 2 tiers on the board. Post a pic when you get it sorted. Yeah, well, I'm going to actually put, because I've got the power supply unit, which is the one spot CS12, the big one. And funny enough, it's still not enough to power all that pedal. I'm going to have to run its external wart. So I'm probably going to have to put a 4-way box in there somewhere, and then have run the 2 of them off there. But I'm going to put that in the middle and then have a tray along it. So I'm actually going to put a couple of pedals up on top of the power supply. And I figured that's a good way to kind of utilize that space. And the power supply is plenty strong enough to handle me stomping on it. So it should be fine. But yeah, well, I'll post a picture. It's Corona time. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. At the moment, you can have a drink anytime you want, all right? But drink responsibly, people. It's funny, isn't it, that if you look at, because in Wellington, they're not collecting your recycling here. So seeing all the bottles we have lying around the house, it makes us look like we're raging alcoholics. But it's just because it's been for 6 weeks now here, so maybe longer, that they haven't been collecting it. And so we've ended up with quite a few bottles, especially if you drink beer, because beer goes, a long way. But yeah, I do enjoy a drink, But I never really drink to get drunk. Not anymore anyway. That was a teenager thing that I used to do, I suppose. Not really anymore. Bartok is... So Luke says, thanks for the elaborate answer. Bartok is also one of my favourites. Yeah. String quartets are just out of the world. Hope to see you somewhere in Poland. Oh, man, I'd love to. When we can all travel again. Who knows? I'll have to get a gig over there. Yeah, string quartets are amazing. Vic was talking about when you drop the guitar and put a ding in it. He thought you meant tuning was dropped. Oh, I see. Yeah. So sorry, I did start on that and I got distracted. That's welcome to my world. That's what I'm like all the time. Yeah. So here I took a chip out of this guitar. I had a gig bag on my back and I was in such a hurry. I just finished the gig and I had 5 minutes to get to my next gig, and I was kind of frantically rushing. So I threw the guitar in my gig bag and I forgot to zip it up, just stupidly. And then I threw it on my back, and because it was upright, it stayed in the case just fine. But then, of course, when I got to the gig, I slung the guitar off my shoulder. And then, of course, it fell out the side of the bag. And this guitar literally went crashing down onto the ground, straight onto the headstock, and took a chip out of the headstock here, which is a bit tragic. Now, if this was a Gibson, like you can see back there, my old Les Paul, that's had the headstock broken twice. Because Gibsons have that shitty thin neck thing here, which is just a design flaw. Ibanez, which is one thing I really dig about them. I don't know if you can see that, but there's actually a big thick bit of wood here right at the weak point, right? Because normally that would be the thinnest point, but they put a volute there to make it thicker and make it stronger. And I've literally dropped this guitar a bunch of times and it's been totally fine. Whereas, as I said, the Les Paul has been dropped twice and both times has cracked the neck. Sorry, once was dropped and once was Air New Zealand inside a hard case cracked it 20 plus years ago, bastards. But anyway, and that guitar, I had that out because I had a student who was learning a tune that was an E flat, so I had to detune the whole guitar, and I didn't want to detune any of my main guitars that I use, so I took that out. It's a hardtail, and I just detuned it to E, all the strings down to E flat. It's got heavy strings on it, so I can do that. And then I was able to teach the lesson. So yeah, it's cool for that. Right, what else have we got there? So yeah, as I was going to say, with this guitar, I've done a few changes on it too. As you'll see, I took off the extra volume and tone. I hate those anyway. I just want one volume, one tone, make it real simple. The switch used to be here in the four knobs, so I moved the switch down. I want to be able to get that. It's still not quite where I want it. If I ever got a signature guitar, listen up, Ibanez. If I ever got a signature guitar, I'd have that moved over to about here. I'd get rid of the pickguard probably, or maybe, I don't know, whatever. But somewhere around there. So that, like where a Stratocaster is, where you can just get your finger under it and roll it. And because I like that. I like to be able to use the volume a lot. But I can't on this guitar, so that's fine. Serious question. Do you think gear really matters? Don't you find guitars, whatever they may be, sound like you? Yeah, I agree. I think gear matters and gear also doesn't matter. And I know that's such a weasel answer, but it's sort of... It matters because it's like, you know, you've got to have an instrument or you're not going to be able to make a sound. And they do sound different. This guitar here sounds completely different from this guitar. They just do. I mean, different types of woods, different types of pickups, different scale length, which is the biggest difference in my opinion. Why this guitar sounds way brighter than this does. You know, more zingy kind of top end, and it's so I think that, I mean, the guitars do matter, but really a good player should be able to make a good sound out of any guitar, in my opinion, and make them all work somehow. You know, and I don't think there's ever such a thing as a bad guitar. As long as it plays, then they're all useful tools. You know, it's some of the best recordings I've done with guitars, because I've done a lot of session work, as people know, have been just, you know, sometimes sounds that are just, you go, wow, that's kind of wacky, some crazy pedal into some amp, and you just found a combination that kind of worked for the track, and you'd never use it anywhere else. But it is what it is, you know what I mean? It worked for that track. And so I'm always about that, you know, like they're different tools. But yeah, I mean, the most important thing is the way you play it. You know, I've been watching that Tom Bukovac series. I don't know if I've been following Tom for years anyway, but that series he's doing on YouTube is just awesome. He's a great studio musician, and he talks a lot about playing about it, and I mean that guy can make any guitar sound good. I've heard him play everything from Strats to 325s to today he was playing some guitar with the almonds. It was a Starline actually, and with flat wounds, and he sounded just the same as he always sounds. You know what I mean? So I think a lot of it is the player. So one of the things a lot of musicians forget about is we forget about investing in ourselves, right? We think, oh, if I just get that guitar, oh, that'll be what I need to sound good, or that pedal, or that amp, and yeah, I mean that stuff helps, but it's not the be all and end all. The be all and end all is the way you play. So investing in lessons. I've always, whenever there's a visiting artist, I always make sure I get a lesson with them, and not just guitarists, anybody I can, want to steal some stuff from. And I think it's really important, to think about investing in yourself and your education and your knowledge as much as you're thinking about investing in gear. And I wonder, like if a guitar like this costs, what, $4 or $5 grand or whatever they cost now, do people spend $4 or $5 grand on lessons? I know I haven't in recent years, but then it's different for me. I did that once upon a time. I definitely spent that back in the day. But yeah, anyway, hope that helps. Ah, it's all good. Yeah. So yeah, I must have. I don't know. These tuners are amazing too, by the way. These are Goto 510s. These things, they're a bit worn now. They got a bit of the golds come off. I actually prefer the silver than the chrome color, or whatever it's called. But these are incredible. Best tuners I've ever used. Super, super smooth and accurate, never move. And I actually considered getting a pair put on this, even though this has got Goto locking tuners, just because these 510s are so smooth. They really are the best ones I've ever seen on any guitar. Again, another reason why I really dig this instrument. They're a little bit quite high. This post here looks quite high, but maybe it suits the guitar. Anyway, I digress. Serious question. With certain effects, pedals, and EQing, you can make cheap guitar sound more expensive. Yeah, totally. I mean, a cheap guitar into a great amp can sound really good. Not so much the other way around. Right? You get a great guitar and you plug it like imagine you had a 1959 Gibson 325, right? Like one of the holy grail vintage guitars, and you plug it into a PV Rage that's just got a broken speaker. Is it going to sound good? Probably not. I mean, that's not to say it's not useful. I mean, it could be one of those quirky kind of Jack White type sounds where it sounds like this broken speaker or whatever, but it's not going to really do that guitar justice. So I think that, the amp is really, really important part of it, and the pedals, kind of a lesser part of the equation, but still a part of the equation. But it's that combination of guitar and amp that there's really the magic of where the tone comes from, I think. And then the fingers. It's mostly about the fingers, 80-90% of it, I think. Hi from Hungary. Oh, wow, there's people tuning in from everywhere. Thanks for the content. Thank you. How do I schedule practice time, and how long and what do you practice? Okay, so practice time's an interesting thing. My practice, like right now, is quite different than it was 2 months ago. And prior to that, it was quite different again. It's always changing for me. I mean, right now, you'd think I'd have a lot of time because it's in lockdown, but then my daughter's home because she's not going to school. So therefore, I'm essentially homeschooling in a lot of ways her, or helping out with doing that, doing the cooking and doing all the things like that, which is cool. I dig it, It's got to be done. But it's meant I haven't had that much time for practice or kind of doing stuff I want to do, and that's fine. So it's meant that my practice is disjointed at the moment. But I found that one of the best things you can do is to practice in 15-minute slots. And maybe this is just me, but I really like doing 15 minutes on, then take a minute or two and go and get a glass of water or get up and move around and then come back. And then do another 15 minutes solid, then have another break, and then do another 15 minutes. And then take a decent break at the end of that. And after 3 15-minute slots, that's pretty much occupied an hour with all those breaks. I found I get more done doing that than I do if I just work an hour solid through, 9 times out of 10. The only exception to that is if I'm transcribing. Because once you're transcribing, you just want to keep going. I mean, taking breaks is not really make any difference. But when I'm working on something where I'm intensely focused and I'm working on trying to progress my playing, like a scale run or an arpeggio or a new tune or anything like that, I found those 15-minute slots work really, really well. And that's just because I've been doing it for a long time and I've made all those mistakes about practicing. I used to practice 8 hours a day when I was a teenager, and that was something I did for quite a few years. And I don't know that it was the most fruitful time of my practicing. I probably thought it was, and maybe it was, I don't know. But what I found, that a lot of that practice time was just ineffective noodling. It wasn't real, and maybe that's useful too, I don't know. But I could have been so much more effective with my time, and that's once I realized, okay, I need to have a schedule. So I wrote out what I was going to do, and I've always done that. I've always had a list of what I'm going to do. I don't write at the moment, because right at the moment with this lockdown thing, my practice is kind of mental. So at the moment, what I'm working on is I've been using these Jazz 3s again, the bigger ones, the XLs. I've kind of gone back to those, and so I've been really enjoying trying to get used to this pick again. So I've been doing some technique work probably more than anything at the moment. And of course, learning tunes. I've been working on various different tunes, on improving them. I mean, just earlier today, I was working on Ladybird, and I was working on, what was the other one I did? What's it called? God, I'm terrible with the names of tunes. That tune, I'm Black Narcissus, Joe Henderson. So that was another tune that I was working on, and I was working on some groove stuff. Just trying to get. So I had the click on, and I was trying to get more solid with it, because it's feeling like I haven't been playing gigs and I haven't been doing any of the normal stuff that I do playing wise. So just felt I needed to do some work with the metronome and just try and solid up on a few things. So yeah. So how long? For now, at the moment, I mean, it's an hour a day, maybe an hour and a half if I'm lucky. A couple of months ago, it was 3 hours a day. I try to, and I'd split it up over the period of the day. When we were in Europe, I actually didn't do all that much practice, not as much as normal, because we were traveling around a lot. Maybe an hour a day. And then, prior to that, I've done big practice sessions, but I've always made sure of a point of practicing something every day. I think that's the critical thing, is you have something to do every day, and so you're working towards goals. I find it that useful to do a big practice session all at once. It's like you got to just slow and steady chip away at it. Oh, the other thing I've been working on too is trying to get my sound as even and clean as I can. So, working on tone production of notes. So I find that with this pick, it tends to sound quite sharp on the attack, sharper than what the picks I have been using. But so I've been working on trying to round that sound of that pick by how I attack it, which is a part of it. So, but what I do like about this, and this is the reason I've gone back to these, is I found that it's helped with my chops quite a bit. The other picks I was using, which were the Dunlop 1mm picks, sounded better for rhythm guitar, and were probably a slightly fatter tone, but the chops were really struggled with the technique of it. So now what I'm finding with this is I've got more technique with it and more chops out of it, although I'm not really a chopsy player anyway. But by having more technique and chops, it means that I can develop, if I'm developing the tonal side of that technique, then that should get me into a better place. And it's always good to change it up anyway. So I'm just trying some. I'm always trying new picks. I used V picks for a lot of last year. I tried a bunch of different ones of those. And they were really cool. They were really good. I found they were a little bit bright for me, for my kind of the sound I want. But I really liked the technique and articulation of some of them. For a certain player that needs more articulation, they would be excellent. I didn't need that, so that wasn't working for me. Change it up. Try it all the time. I really like that idea. Luke says, totally agree about genres. I've used the word because lack of better word. Yeah, I know what you mean. Could you talk a bit about motivic development during solos? So yeah, that's a big one. That's something that I think about a lot. So I'll take an idea, like say I've got an idea. and then I'll play it again, but I never want to play the same thing again because that doesn't make any sense. So you see there, instead of going up to the F, I went down to the F on that phrase. So I'm playing essentially the same thing, but a variation on it. And then usually I think things sound good in threes, so I'll usually play it, but with a further extension. And I really like that idea of thinking of things in threes, thinking of an idea and then repeating it, but with a variation. And I'm really a big fan of motivic development, because for me, the best solos are always the ones that have essentially what sounds like a composed element to them. Now that they're improvised, but they've got an essentially what sounds composed element to them. So I think like that. I try and think like a composer when I'm improvising solos. So I'm thinking, like, what would a composer do? Okay, well, they're not going to start the solo off, if someone was to write one out, as blazing with a whole lot of notes, are they? That's just typically not what happens. It's going to build up to something. So I'll try and play like that, and I'll play something. I'll play an idea, and then I'll develop it. And the easiest way to develop ideas is to just take one idea and see how many different ways you can play it. Right, that idea, and then maybe I'll go. So slightly different. Whatever. So I'll try and go through things like that and see how many different ways can I play that same idea and develop it. And that's really good for your phrasing as well, which is a big thing. Huge respect for... So G-Flash says, I have a huge respect for guys like Joe Pass. Me too. I love Joe Pass. I've watched his videos, but obviously he's the real deal. Oh, totally. Joe Pass is badass. I mean, if you guys haven't checked him out enough, you should, because that guy can really freaking play. I've watched his videos, and he's obviously the real deal. I'm sure you'd agree. And his tone, others is but his and others' tone is another matter. Why does jazz guitar sound so dead? Right, so a lot of jazz guitar players go for that really warm kind of tone. I mean, Jim Hall was a proponent of that. If you listen to Jim Hall, you'll hear exactly what I talk about. The kind of wound tone control back. I'll turn that mic off because you're probably hearing. So that's more a traditional jazz guitar tone, right? And it's not emulating a hollow body guitar like a lot of people think. I have over there, I have an old Gibson L4 from the 1940s, 1948 it is. And it doesn't sound like that. It doesn't sound like that with a pickup or anything. None of those guitars sound like that dead sound. That's not what an archtop sounds like at all. Archtops don't sound like that even with flat ones on them. They just don't. I mean, that's an archtop with the tone control turned down. And so, if I did that on a 335 type guitar and turn the tone control down, I mean, it's a certain approach, right? I've personally never liked it because to me it's quite dynamically flat, right? If I play that way, it's like it doesn't. I've taken the treble response away. So now the guitar doesn't sound like a guitar so much to me. It starts sounding more like sometimes like a Fender Rhodes, I did a gig with Ben Wilcock one time and we played duo, just him and I, and he played his Fender Rhodes and I played this guitar. And I got that kind of sound because we were playing standards, right? And we were playing in this big hall. And there were times where we couldn't tell who was playing. I had to look down at my fingers because our sounds were so alike. It was crazy. And, to me, it's like that. I like guitars to sound like guitars, So I like the brightness of it, and it's like embrace that, and maybe that's a jazz fusion thing. But I don't know. I mean, Wes Montgomery his sound was never like that. You know what I mean? George Benson, his sound was never really like that. Pat Metheny's sound is like that. He's coming from that Jim Hall kind of place. But Pat Metheny's sound is like a brighter version, a clearer version of Jim Hall's, and it makes a lot more sense because you have more dynamic range now. But of course, Pat had that chorusing thing going on and all kinds of stuff too. So a very modern approach to it. But I like guitars to sound like guitars. So for me, I kind of leave the tone control alone unless there's a problem. You know what I mean? I leave it up full and like if I'm playing in a venue and the room's bright and nasty, then sometimes I'll dial it back to try and control that a little bit if I can. But most of the time I want a guitar to sound like a guitar. I mean, to me, the ultimate sound on a guitar would be to sound like a piano, an acoustic piano. Those really strong low notes you get on an acoustic piano? That's kind of what I want an electric guitar to sound like when it's through an amp. And that's actually what my Martin sounds like, which is back there. It really has that piano-like note. I don't know how to explain that, but hopefully you know what I mean. Yeah, it does. I mean, it's just a thing, it's a certain thing. And for some people, that's exactly the sound they want to go for. And then that's cool, go for it. It's not me. But, if it is someone else, then that's cool. They're expressing their music. There's no kind of rules. So to me, it's just you got to do. Well, the only rule really, I think, is that you got to be honest to yourself and who you are, or else you come across as a fraud with your playing, and people can sense that. So to me, it's like when I do play with that kind of sound, I can do that. I can play a kind of a Jim Hall type, Joe Pass type approach, but it's not me. So I'm kind of. I'd rather try and be me, whatever that is. And I think the thing with me and my sound is kind of more, in terms of the tone, more like a blues guitar tone. I like that kind of slightly edgy thing. You see, that's kind of on the edge of breakup on it. I'm using the Fractal, but it's set to a little Fender type amp, which is usually what I go for. Thanks for the answer, Nick. I've asked because I'm working really hard to have the ability to move ideas through chord changes easily. Yeah, I mean, give it time. I found studying tunes to be one of the most useful things with that. So take one tune, so say All the Things You Are, for example, and just go deep with that one tune. Spend a month on All the Things You Are. Seriously. Because we don't tend to do that, do we? We're trying to learn 10 tunes at once, or we're trying to learn a little bit of this and a little bit of that, or whatever. But just take All the Things You Are, or whatever particular standard you like, or a pop tune, or rock tune, or whatever, and then just go, right, I'm going to spend a month on that tune, and I'm going to go really deep inside it, and I'm going to go, right, well, how do I play through those chord changes, right? What if I play thirds over All the Things You Are? And then what if I play fourths over All the Things You Are? And then fifths and sixths and sevenths and tenths and whatever. And then what if I play 3-note voicings through All the Things You Are? And what if I play All the Things You Are in another key? What if I play it with substituted chords? What if I play All the Things You Are where I'm playing the melody in the bass and the chords up top? What if I play tritone substitutions on every chord? What if I play it where I'm not playing beat one ever? Try those sorts of things with one particular tune and get real deep inside it. And what you'll find is that kind of spills over to every other tune, Because, 251s are in 50 million tunes or something, right? So if you work on a 251 for All the Things You Are, you know it for every other tune that has that same kind of 251 structure. So that's kind of a good way to kind of work on playing through chord changes. Just develop it on one tune for extensively and it'll spill over. Hope that helps. What else have we got here? Have I missed anyone's questions? I hope not. Of course, it's easier on modal tunes, but in a more functional one. Of course, it's easier on modal tunes, but in one more functional harmony, one have to be aware of it. Oh, I see. Okay, yeah, sure. Totally, yeah. I mean, modal tunes are great because the chords don't move, right? So take it, not always, but you know what I mean. Like something like So What? It's D minor, for example. So on and so on, right? It's sitting on D minor for quite some time, right? And so you have to be able to play. You don't have to worry about moving through chord changes. So it's a great way to develop this stuff. playing, so I just went through a couple of things there, a couple of different intervals, a couple of different chords, and I just kind of, tried to play something. The other thing too with practice, what I would say is don't feel bad about listening to music or going on YouTube as part of your practice. I think that's really useful. I mean, and when I say listening to music, I mean actively listening. Don't put it on the background when you're, vacuuming the floor or something. You know what I mean? Like actually, like actively sit down and really closely listen to the music and see what's going on and try and get, like absorb it. And I think that's a really important thing. And I do that as part of my practice. So I listen to a lot of music, and I don't feel guilty about it anymore. I used to feel really guilty about it. I'd be like, oh, I should be practicing. And why I just, spent half an hour listening to this record and, maybe I should be doing more playing. That listening is really critical, I think. So do that. And YouTube's great for that. There's so much great stuff out there, especially right now. Like, there's heaps of people doing cool shit. So, tune in and check it out. I mean, a couple that I really like is Leyland Sklar's things on YouTube. I think he's doing some great stuff. Just he's playing through those old tracks that he played on and, telling stories of the road. And I find it really inspiring. He's such a cool dude too. Tom Bukovac, as I mentioned earlier, I think that was a great series of just, Tom sitting in his garage playing some guitar and talking about music and his thoughts. And, he's got the kids playing in the background and it's filmed on his cell phone, and it's just kind of like whatever, But it's just cool, and there's loads of good stuff around it. I mean, Rick Beato's channel is really great. I really like a guy called Rhett Shull. I think his channel is really great. He's got some really good, interesting stuff. He's into that kind of blues rock Americana type thing. I actually met Rhett at the NAMM show, and I hadn't realized. I've been watching all these videos, and I thought, God, that guy looks really familiar. And I was watching probably about 10 videos of him on YouTube, and I thought, really liked his content, the way it was filmed, the way he talks about stuff and all that. And then I was going through some old photos, and I played at the NAMM show at the Vertex booth, and I played Kid Charlemagne for Mason. And there was Rhett Shull sitting there hanging out and doing it. And I remembered that Mason had briefly introduced me to him. So I had actually met him, and that's why he was familiar. But at the time of watching these videos, I didn't know. But he's got some great stuff on his channel. I mean, there's some really cool stuff. Paul Davids is another guy's doing some, really good quality productions on his videos. Oh, heaps of stuff. I mean, Tim Pierce, another guy I really like checking out on YouTube. One of the great studio musicians. I tend to gravitate a lot to the studio guys because it's kind of an area I've done a lot of work in. So, am I seeing? Why is that not showing up on the bottom there? What's going on here? Have I broken things? Hope this is still going out live. I assume it is. My thoughts on the tone setting is and that's all I can see. Sorry, Jason, for the moment. Oh no, has my computer gone packed a wobbly? What's going on here? Can you people hear this? Can you tell me if you can? Why is that not showing up down the bottom? Oh, there we go. Hey, my thoughts on the tone setting is it's good to set it up so you can have enough available variation with your actual touch. If you kill the treble off, it's harder to express tone variations. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, and that's something that I find a lot of people do is that they take all that treble off, and so therefore they lose the expression out of their playing. And so, sometimes that's what people want. They want that kind of flatter dynamic range, and that's cool. But it's not me. Like, I like music that's really dynamic and alive, and so yeah, I totally agree, Jason. What's my favorite music? Don't know, really. Good question. Pop music. Maybe. I don't know. I really like pop music, and it's cool. There's some really great shit out there, And when I say pop music, I mean, I consider bands like Steely Dan pop, or Sting, or Peter Gabriel, or Seal is another one I really like. Lots of music. I mean, I love jazz, of course. I like blues. I mean, blues has always been close to my heart. Guys like Robin Ford that kind of straddle that line between jazz and blues. Those are guys I really dig. Chris Kane. These guys are big influences on me. Oh God, who else is there? Who do I really dig? Michael Landau, Tales from the Bulge. That's an album you guys should all go and get. Robin Ford, Talk to Your Daughter. That's an album you guys should all go and get if you haven't already. Any of the stuff he did with Vinnie Colaiuta, the Blue Line stuff. Those guys were a killer. Oh God, I like guys like Bruce Forman too. I think Bruce is a badass guitar player and a beautiful human being, and so I think that to me is as important as his playing as his personality. And so I really like Bruce's music. All kinds of stuff. Anything that's done with real integrity, then I'm into it. You know what I mean? Anything that's kind of done because it's like a commercial idea or there's a falseness to it, then I'm just not into it. You know what I mean? Talk to Your Daughter. That's killer. Jing Chi, that's another Robin Ford album I really like. More a fusion-y album, but it's really great. Robin Ford's great. I interviewed Robin Ford when he came to New Zealand. It was an interesting experience, that's all I will say. But he's definitely been a big inspiration for me, and definitely someone when I think of like a really great guitar tone, he's one of the first people who comes to mind. Not only that kind of guitar tone, that sort of sound, but like if I'm going for this sort of sound, I'll just dial this up. That sort of sound as I'm thinking of Robin's playing when I'm trying to approach that. Like again, the Talk to Your Daughter. Talk to Your Daughter thing is great. I mean, Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood. Some of those guitar tones on that album are just killer. And if you like his kind of playing, you'll love Chris Kane, because Chris Kane's the real deal. Seriously. Do you have any advice on how to hide the pick between your fingers while playing? Okay, so I hold the pick like this. I have quite an unusual picking style. I close my hand like this, right? I don't want to rest on my hand, but I straighten out my first finger, kind of like that. Now, I know a lot of people kind of do that, and they curve that first finger, but that's kind of how I do it, right? I don't think it really matters. As long as you're not kind of pivoting your hand. I see people doing this. That's going to slow you down immensely. Different if you're doing this, where your fingers are moving. But if it's actually like pivoting from your fingers, that's a problem. So I close my hand up, and it's kind of... And I keep my pick quite straight with the string, and I'm trying to get like an even sound, as within reason. I mean, I'm not a machine. So I do that, and so to go between pick and fingers, what I do is I put the pick here, kind of in that point of my... can you see that? And then I can do that. It's kind of hard to do on this angle, but it's just kind of sitting in there. And what I like about doing that, if you can see that on camera, is that I still get this kind of motion, even with that pick in there, and the finger. How do I show you that? There we go. I've got that claw movement, so I can do things like... So see, at the moment, my pick's hiding in there. And then I see I'm back to my pick. And then I'm back to my fingers. So yeah, that's kind of how I do it. Anyway, so yeah, like I said, keeps it from straight from there to that position and then back to that. I mean, changing from pick to fingers. Oh yeah. So right, I did get there eventually. What chords are you using there? Oh, that little bossa nova vamp was E flat minor 9. So I have E flat, G flat, D flat, and F. Let's get rid of that. And I'm just going between the root note and the fifth, if this is the bit you're talking about. And then up to E flat major 9. So I have E major 9, not E flat. So I have E, G sharp, D sharp, and F sharp. It's just a common kind of 2-chord vamp. Actually, that's one of my favorite places where that exact thing is used is in the Stevie Wonder tune. Don't You Worry About a Thing. You know, and it goes and so on and so on, and there's and then it goes, don't you worry about a thing. Right, and this is one of my favorite things. So if it comes to tone, Bill Frisell is a really big deal. I've heard him live, and he just plays simple arpeggios, and it sounds so full and so beautiful. Do you like Bill Frisell? I'm a huge Bill Frisell fan. I love his playing. I absolutely do love his playing. Thanks, Sasha. He is, again, a big influence. I love the way he uses pedals. I love the way he approaches sound. And I mean, he plays quite simply, you're right. But I think that's like part of the genius of Bill Frisell. It's totally by design. I don't think it's like that he can't do other things. I think he deliberately holds back to just kind of build the music in a certain way. And his tone is so beautiful. He really does get a beautiful tone. It's kind of country-like, but then sort of a modern approach, and pedals and the ambience. And I mean, the thing I hear when I hear Bill Frisell play more than anything is I just hear someone who sounds very, very musical, and that's the key thing. That's what I want. I don't care about chops, to be honest. And I mean, you listen to Bill Frisell, you don't hear chops really, and so therefore it's like I just hear someone who's musical, and that's when I listen to music. It's what I really want. I'd much rather listen to him than some kind of tasteless rock shredder. Do you know what I mean? Not that music doesn't have its place, and there are guys who are cool, like Malmsteen's cool. I dig it. But Bill Frisell for me is somebody whose music kind of I feel something when I hear it, and that's what I want. So yeah, it's great. I saw him play at the Wellington Jazz Festival a couple of years ago, and unfortunately, we just played. We were on tour with Dave Weckl at the same time, and we played the night before in Wellington with Weckl, and then we played Christchurch, I think it was, and then we flew back from Christchurch back to Wellington, and I got a Frisell ticket from the festival, so I went to the gig, but I just literally got in. We've been traveling, we've been on the road, we're doing all of that, so I was absolutely shattered. And I went anyway because I was like, I'm not going to miss this for the world. It's Bill Frisell. And I was so tired, and I could barely keep my eyes up, and I sat the whole concert going like this, trying to keep myself from falling asleep. And it sucked for me because I never got the full experience of what it could have been like had I been ready for it. But it was still amazing, and it still blew my mind and everything about it. And he's quite a mellow kind of player, and here I was tired while there's this mellow music going on. I just had to force myself to stay awake, but I did, and I'm really glad I did because it was beautiful, and it was very moving, and it was very very fantastic. And I wish I could see him again, but in a better state where I actually was alive. Frisell, Jason says, Frisell is a consummate musician. He is. He can play simple or complex, totally. It doesn't matter because he makes it all beautiful. His show in Welly was so damn good. Welly's short for Wellington, for those that are not from here. Yeah, totally. And that's the thing, like, he can make complex things sound incredibly simple, and he can make simple things sound complex because he's a deep player. Sorry, I'm needing some water right now. That's the only reason I'm coughing. I have my drink bottle here, but I think it's empty. Yeah, damn it. And that's his genius, you know what I mean? And he doesn't have to. He has an incredible technique when you think about it, because it's not technique like in terms of chops. It's technique in terms of being able to deliver the music in the way he wants, and that's really the goal. It should be the goal of every musician, I think. What do you think has happened to chorus on guitar? It was big once, now it's gone. I think it's a phase like anything else. Wah wah was really big in a certain time, wasn't it? And then now it's like it's still cool, but people don't use it as much as they used to. It kind of goes through phases, and I think anything that's kind of electronic like that can be of an era. And that's, like synthesizers, you think about like Roland Junos, right? They were definitely of an era. And I think because of that, they become, it becomes of an era, and therefore it dates it. And that's probably partly why I like, it doesn't make any difference. I like things that are real. I quite like wah wah as an effect because you're controlling it. It's, but it's real, anything that's real is cool with me. I was sitting next to a wonderful pianist, and at the end she said, I could take another 2 hours of that. Awesome. Yeah, I couldn't have taken 2 more hours of that. I was so shattered when I saw Bill Frisell, and I really wanted to be there in the moment and doing and enjoying the music, but I struggled, to be honest, just because I was so tired, like I said, from being on the road. And we weren't partying. I mean, it wasn't like that kind of gig. Weckle doesn't drink, or barely. I think we had one wine the whole week on tour or something. It was more like with dinner type thing. And of course, most of the guys in the band do, but we were busy traveling, so we didn't really have time for that. I didn't anyway. So yeah, it's sort of one of those things. I think, I wish I could see Bill Frisell again. I will. I'll go and see him. Yeah, he's great at the solo guitar thing too. I think solo guitar is one of those things too that separates the men from the boys, really. It's one of the ways that you can really tell how good someone's got their shit together is, can they do it by themselves? You're not relying on anyone else, right? Your time feel has to be on, your sound, everything's exposed. And so I think that's, really, it is. It's one of the ways that separates the men from the boys, in my opinion. And some of my favorite solo players, check out Tommy Emmanuel. I saw Tommy a couple of years ago in Wellington, and a friend of mine actually hooked me up with a meet and greet with him. So I got to hang with Tommy for a couple of hours before the gig, and we just sat backstage and played. He let me play his guitar and play some stuff for him, and we talked shit and all that kind of stuff. And he's such a lovely guy. And then I went and saw his gig that night. And man, what killer player. Just his sense of time and groove is just second to none, really. And, so he really owns that solo thing. Martin Taylor's another one. Joe Pass is another one. Those guys have ruled solo guitar. Heaps of guys. Jonathan Kreisberg, I really like his album One. I'm not a fan of all of the stuff on that record, but I like a lot of it. And JK really can play his ass off, and you see it in that album, It's strong, Yeah, maybe one day I'll do a solo album, but I gotta get my shit together before I do that. Tommy sounds great on all his guitars, right? And acoustic guitars are one of the things that it's just very pure, and yet he sounds the same on all of those different instruments. But I really like him on electric too. Have you guys heard Tommy Emmanuel play electric? I've got a video of his from Guitar Talk from back in the day. I think it's on YouTube too, of him playing a Telecaster. Back when his Aussie accent was really strong too. But he's such a lovely guy. He was really awesome. And, when we first met, he came and he kind of gave me a hug, and he said, "Hey, I hear that you're a really hotshot guitar player from my friend Mel," which was the connection of how we met. And I was like, "Oh, man, stop it." And then he was like, he said, "Okay, well, let's hear you play." He goes, "There's my guitar. Go and grab my guitar." And so I grabbed his mate, and he said, "Just play me something." So I played something, and I can't even remember what I played. Probably a jazz tune or something was one of those ones that came to mind. And he was like, "You're a jazz man." He goes, "I like it. I dig the jazz thing." And he was talking about all these things that he liked about the music. And we hit it off straight away. And he asked, what I do and what I'm into. And he was really interested in me and what I do as a player. And, here I was thinking I was there to go and meet him and get inside what he's into and what he does and his thinking and all that thing. And he was just as interested in what I was up to. And he's just a lovely guy, a good human being. And plays his ass off. So even, we talked earlier about playing through changes and stuff. Take a chord progression like that. E flat 6/9. A flat minor 7. D flat 9. Take something like that, right? How can I develop that? Maybe I might go, right, which is just inversions of the first chord, right? So E flat 6/9, and then the inversion, and then the inversion, right? So instead of root inversion, meaning root note on the bottom, now I have the 9 on the bottom, and then I have the 3rd on the bottom, and then maybe from there I'll go to A flat minor, right? And then to D flat 13. So. That's one way you could develop it, right? Maybe you could do something like... right? So I'll take two kind of chord progression like that, a very simple kind of chord progression. Oh, this seems to have stopped. What's going on there? So I'll take a very simple chord progression like that and just kind of work on playing through them. We all sound the same no matter what. I have loads of guitars and sadly sound the same on each of them. Yeah, I think so. And some people have definitely developed their own thing. We all sound like ourselves anyway. You're dead right with that. But also I think some people have a really unique take on how they sound like themselves. A case in point is Wayne Krantz. Do you guys know Wayne Krantz? Just killer guitar player. I saw him in New York. I've taken some lessons with him. Try to steal a lot of his stuff, and nobody sounds like Wayne Krantz. They really don't. So while he sounds like himself, he sounds like a complete original version of himself. Nobody has that thing. And some players are just like that. They're a little more, have their own thing going on with it. You know what I mean? So Luke said, I try not to listen to too much or to one particular guitar player for too long because it seems to influence my playing just a bit too much. I've heard Robin Ford saying that he just don't listen to guitar playing anymore. Yeah, I think that's definitely a thing too. Although in saying that, I think it goes through phases, right? I go through phases where I listen to a lot of one player, and then you move on to something else. And that's actually a good thing. And any of the guys I tend to go back to repeatedly, those are the guys that are strong influences on my playing. It should be pretty obvious. John Scofield's one of them for me. He's someone who's been a big influence on my playing, composing, everything really. And he's a great guy too, so I kind of, the way he kind of deals with people and stuff has been a big influence for me as well. And so in all respects, that guy's an influence for me. Bruce Foreman is another one. I stole a lot of stuff off Bruce that I use all the time, and not just like music things too, like philosophical things, like the way people set amps up, for example, or the way they kind of deal with rehearsal things, or whatever, you know what I mean? And so I think that, listening to too much of any one thing is probably a good thing to some point, but then once you've got that, it's time to move on and grow again. Otherwise, you can stop growing. And I don't think there's anything wrong with being a clone of someone. Nobody really becomes a clone of anyone anyway. I hear people all the time say, "Oh, you must not become a clone." And I hear those people playing, and their playing sucks. You know what I mean? And you go, well, you're giving advice that people shouldn't try and clone themselves of someone else, and you can't play. Do you know what I mean? And so for me, it's kind of like, I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to play like someone else. I think that's an important part of the process, and I think everybody should do that. You got to know. I haven't heard anybody sound great at jazz guitar without checking out Wes Montgomery. Period. I don't think it can be done. You don't know the history of the music, and therefore you can't play the jazz guitar well without knowing Wes Montgomery or Django Reinhardt or a bunch of other players. You know what I mean? Joe Pass or Pat Martino. You just got to know what those guys were up to and what they were doing and what to be able to play that music well. It's like playing blues guitar and not knowing B.B. King. So therefore you've got to go deep inside with B.B. King's playing, I think. And so therefore I think that, nobody sounds like B.B. King, do they? Nobody sounds like John Scofield, for example. I've had a few people say to me that I sound a lot like John Scofield. I don't think I really do at all. And the more I try and play the style that he plays, I think the less I sound like him. Not the more I sound like him, but the more I get inside the music and develop it and learn from it and absorb it, the more I start to figure out who I am and what I do. And I've learned from that music, and I've learned new musical things, and my ears have developed, and my sound has developed, and my touch has developed, and all of those things. So I think, studying someone else's playing is actually a really, really good thing. And then take it from there and run with it. And don't worry about, trying to be, if people say you're a clone or whatever, I think that's, because nobody's a clone, really. That's such a beautiful tune. That's Keep Me in Mind by John Scofield. I love that tune. Jason said that's bang on about the clone thing. There's no way anyone could clone another truly great player. You can imitate, but that's as far as it goes. Be yourself and play the music you love. Totally. You know what I mean? I have heard people get pretty close to sounding like Wes Montgomery, but they still don't really sound like Wes Montgomery. And, if they start from that place of sounding a lot like Wes Montgomery, over time they start sounding more and more like themselves. Like I've learned certain licks that I've got from various places, like this one. It's a 2-5-1 lick. Right, I got that from a Ulf Wykenius recording. Great guitar player, Swedish guitar player, with Niels Henning Orsted Peterson, and who played drums on it? I can see his face. Can't remember. But anyway, it's an album called Tour Brother, and it's from the tune Alone Together. And actually that lick, I play that quite often. It's one of my favorite minor 2-5-1 licks. And I learned that from that record, and I played it just like he played it to start with, as much as I could. And then now I've just kind of played it. And then recently I went back and listened to the recording, and I thought, I wonder, how that goes. And I listened to it, and I actually don't play it anything like how he played it anymore. It's become morphed into my own kind of thing, and it's kind of funny how that works. So Luke says, very true, Nick. Also, listening to other instruments is very good for development. Yeah, I'd agree. Like, I'm really inspired by horn players and piano players. I think there's a lot of really great information you can steal from those guys. The way horn players will play kind of more slurred type things. They'll go things like, rather than, just wouldn't do that. They go. And then, you hear things like that horn players will do. And so I like, kind of stealing that stuff from them. And so, yeah, I listen to lots of different instruments and try and borrow from everyone. It's all good as long as you've got good information coming in. Great, you know what I mean? I think learn from everyone. But I think only listening to guitar players is not a good thing. And I think only listening to saxophone players is not a good thing. You want to be listening to everything. Anything that's good, do that, or do what you like, really. There's no rules, Listen to whatever you like. If you like listening to Steve Vai and that's all you want to listen to, cool, do it, Become a badass at that music and know more about that music than anybody else in the world. And, That's admirable. And then maybe you can make your own music that's built off Steve Vai's music or something, or who knows, it's pretty cool. I'm going to have to sign off in a minute. This has been nearly an hour and a half. So I've really enjoyed having your guys' input, and I really appreciate that. I hope everybody's well. I'm going to play something to just kind of head this out, and if we've got any quick questions, fire them in there and I'll get to them. I think it's time to go to the swamp. Thanks, everyone. I really appreciate it. Everyone tuning in. Yeah, it's just about time for a scotch and then bed. It's one of my night caps is just have a quiet little a wee dram and head off to bed. Although lately I've been having some tequila because I have that nice bottle of tequila there, which is cool. But yeah, I have trouble sleeping anyway. You can probably tell, I'm half asleep most of the time. Insomnia runs in my family. So, I'll be up late as it is. And that's the perfect time to practice anyway, when it's peaceful and quiet, is for me. So I will be having I have a tomatin, however you say that, bottle there. So I'm going to go and have one of those in a moment. So anyway, thanks very much for tuning in, everyone. I hope you're well, and stay safe and look after your friends and family, and stay home. This virus is still everywhere. People are getting way too casual about it right now, I think. Especially here in Wellington. We haven't had a case here in Wellington for 2 weeks now. I think people think the virus is gone, which it hasn't. It could just as easily pop up again, and next thing you know, we're all back in lockdown again because some people just, So anyway, stay at home and be cool, and stay at home and play guitar. I mean, really, isn't this what we always all want to do? Stay at home and play guitar. I mean, that's like the ultimate in life, really. Anyway, take care, people. I'm going to try and do these weekly as much as I can, maybe on a Sunday night in New Zealand or a Monday night. Let me know what you think. If you guys think I should do them every, once a week or whatever, then I'm happy to do it if people want to do it and want to know some stuff and I've got something to offer. So people are good enough to teach me this stuff, so I only feel it's fair that I should give some of it back. So if you think I should do it on a Monday night in New Zealand, which would be Sunday in the States or Europe, happy to. Or Sunday night, meaning Saturday night there, or whatever, if it helps everybody get through this situation, I'm happy to do it. So anyway, let me know. Take care, people. Cheers.